The following program does not necessarily represent the views and opinions of Reality Radio 101, its advertisers and sponsors, or its listening audience. Listener discretion is advised. Good afternoon and welcome to the Liquid Green Health Show with your hosts, Fred and Janet Cox, right here on Reality Radio 101. To get on board right now, send us an email. Our email address is liquidgreenhealthshow@gmail.com. Now, right to your hosts of the Liquid Green Health Show, Fred and Janet Cox.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's October the 2nd, 5:30 p.m., Sunday. And my name is Fred Cox, and my co-host is Janet Cox. A warm welcome to Liquid Green Health Show. To our listeners in Toronto, across Canada, the United States, and around the world, thank you for allowing us into your private space. Today's show is sponsored by Liquid Green Products, producers of eco-superior green cleaning products for your home, office, car, and of course, your pets. And if you're not using these eco-superior green products, then what in the world are you using? Visit us at liquidgreenproducts.com. Click on any product you'd like to try, and don't forget to enter that code RR101 to get a huge discount. All right? Okay. This is a live broadcast, folks, all our previous broadcasts can be found on socials such as Spotify, Facebook, and YouTube. Just type in Liquid Green Health Show and like, share, comment, subscribe. You know, we'd like to hear from you. Give us drop us a line at liquidgreenhealthshow@gmail.com and let us know where you are listening from.
Do you know, it's so important when you know, we have had somebody, my good friend Chester, he actually listened to some of the past shows. He hit on the one with Gideon.
Oh,
remember
okay.
Gideon Exeter, who spoke about, you know, what happens after our guest today will talk.
Yes.
And he says, oh my God, I know that man since we were children. They grew up together, and now he's just found him back listening to the Liquid Green Health Show.
Okay.
So the word gets out. We have a lot of listeners here in Toronto and generally, you know.
So once again, folks, let us know where you are listening from. Send us an email at liquidgreenhealthshow@gmail.com, and let us know where you're listening from. Today's broadcast, like all our broadcasts, is for education and entertainment purposes only, and it's designed to stimulate the mind and help to bring us one step closer to living a healthier lifestyle. We have a fantastic show today. It is a health show, but for the past few weeks, we've kind of veered away from specific health topics. But the topics we have been...
I'm going to correct you there.
No, hold on. I'm not done. The topics we have been talking about, we have designed it to still reflect health issues, right? And that's what you were going to say.
Right, because... when we talk about some of the issues, everything always comes back to stress.
Yes.
The big S.
Yes.
Right. And
today is no different.
Right.
Today we are talking about health versus wealth. Right. And why we're doing that, the main reason we're doing that is because we understand that many people have compromised their health to gain wealth.
Yep.
Only, you know, in the end, to be forced to spend their hard-earned wealth trying to regain their health.
And I'm sure we all know at least one person who that is true who makes that comment true.
Mhm.
So many of us, in the youth, we don't do the right things, not in health, not in saving, so much of that.
We take
And
these
then
things for granted
we do.
until it's
Too late.
too late, or you get into a situation
Mhm.
where you have to do it only to realize
Mhm.
that you have been spending
Right.
your hard-earned wealth elsewhere.
So this week,
Yeah.
I was actually listening. I don't know if some of our listeners may be familiar. There's a gentleman, he's very popular on YouTube, Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Mhm.
And he's trained in neuroscience,
Okay.
and he studies mind-body medicine. And plus, he's a motivational speaker. I like him. I listen to him a lot. And what he says, basically, like so many of the experts, is that there is a direct connect with our energy and
Mhm.
our future, meaning we have survival emotions, right? This is all going to make sense when I'm done. We have
Okay.
survival emotions. And when we are in stress, it's
Mhm.
because the cortisol, it's because of those hormones. They're there for a specific reason, and they're designed to be short term.
Okay.
But because of the stresses that we all have,
Mhm.
they don't go away. So
True.
we have long-term effects of our bodies because we're in survival mode
Mhm.
so long, and that's what creates disease, right? So what he was explaining is that our thoughts, anything we think,
Mhm.
our body doesn't recognize the difference between what's real and what's a thought.
And that is true.
So we have to train ourselves to think differently
Right.
and not to worry about the stresses, right? Because literally, it's our thoughts that can make us sick.
Right. And
Right?
and basically it's the law of attraction at work there.
Yeah.
Because whatever you think of and you focus on it, you're impressing the mind with that desire to
Mhm.
have those things manifest in your life.
Right. So he continued to say that if people know that our future, our brain, our coherent brain, we have to convince our brain that we can solve the issues that are bothering us, right?
Right.
If we are not careful, we continuously we won't be able to heal and repair our bodies. Because we create the things that bother us, the resentment, anxiety, fear, anger, the things that stress us out, right?
And that is so true.
Yeah.
But just before we get to our guests,
Mhm.
there's one thing that a lot of these doctors tend to stress, doctors and scientists, they always stress the brain.
Instead of, I know you're going to say the mind.
I would like to say it is not the brain, it is the mind that you are impressing to have these things manifest.
So I'm going to agree with you and say when we convince our minds,
yes,
then our body will also be convinced.
Because the mind is a memory bank,
Yeah.
and every cell in the body is a memory bank.
Yeah.
So the cell remembers the last thing that occurred,
Right.
and it plays it back to you. So,
and because of that, now, once we can convince ourselves that we don't need to worry,
mhm.
then we're on a good path. And today,
And that is why we have our guests.
yes,
Today.
Basil and Ian,
Right.
they're going to help us to do just that,
And
cut the worry,
right.
so that we can convince our brains and
mind,
our bodies
convince our mind
not to be diseased.
Not to worry, because
Right.
worrying causes stress, and stress
Yes.
brings on inflammation.
Yeah.
Inflammation leads to disease,
And
that's
one of
why
the-
we should never sacrifice one for the other,
Right.
because they are equally important for
Exactly.
a balanced lifestyle. Right?
So, Basil.
So our guests today
Mhm.
are Basil Rodney and Ian Romans of IG Wealth Management.
Where's Basil? Okay, Basil, I'm just gonna, I wanna put something out there. I have known Mr. Rodney from he was a child. I'm older than you, Basil, but we
Who's
hail
dating?
from Falmouth in Jamaica. And our families go way back, all my brothers, my sisters, etc. And here in Canada, we have connected. And you actually are my financial advisor.
Yes.
And thanks to you, we have been able to do some trips that we would probably not have been able to do successfully. Or we did a fantastic medical mission in Guyana that was awfully expensive, but thanks to you and the plan, we were able to constantly take what we need without disturbing the future, right?
Absolutely.
So Basil has over 25 years as a retail manager, and he has spent the last 12 years in financial services, in the financial services industry, working as a financial planner with IG Wealth Management. With the years of experience that he's had as a manager, together with his great people skills, and that's no lie, you're Mr. Congeniality. He helps his client to create, grow, and protect their wealth. And that's why I feel so confident that you're going to do a great job with us on the show today.
Absolutely.
He's a proponent of the value of the word that's so bandied about now so much, generational wealth. He focuses on assisting clients who are retired or are actively planning their retirement to attain their retirement goals by giving sage financial and investment advice to preserve wealth that is being passed on to the grands and the great grands for generations to come, just like the way the rich people do it. Basil, you went to Ryerson Polytechnic.
Yes.
Have business administration at IFSC Institute. You have your mutual funds certificates, Canada Life. I know you do life insurance, and we don't want to spend the entire time going through the bios, but that's Basil. Now, tell us about Ian, and then we're going to get back to Basil and get into the whole topic for the day.
Yeah, Ian Romans is a graduate of the University of Manchester, England, and holds an MBA in business. And let me just adjust my screen. Let me make an apology here because everything seems to be cropping up very, very big for me here.
In other words, he can't read.
Yeah. he's a trust and estate practitioner with the Society of Trust and Estate Practitioners, a chartered life underwriter, and holds qualified associated financial planner designation, a registered retirement consultant with the Canadian Institute of Financial Planning, a lifetime member with the Financial Advisors Association of Canada, a 12-year senior consultant with IG Wealth Management with over 25 years of experience in the corporate financial management and a background in accounting, business management, tax planning, estate planning, finance, and human resource development. His extensive business experience weaves among many countries, including the Caribbean, USA, and Canada. He has also held many senior management roles, including Chief Financial Officer. He draws on his business acumen to coach business owners, self-employed professionals, families, and young individuals who want to become financially independent. Ian and Carol have been married for 32 years, and together they have 4 adult children. Now,
okay. That's I mean, that's a bio. Wow. So these guys sound good, like on paper. Let's see if they sound good in real life, right? So Basil,
yes,
I know we're gonna, as we said, let you go first. You have helped your clients achieve true financial well-being.
that's correct.
What is it? I'm gonna put it back to you. What is it that you want to talk to us about today? We're gonna let you do most of the talking.
Absolutely. Thank you, Janet. Thank you, Fred. Basically, there are a lot of people that are retiring, roundabout now, especially going into the new year. We get a lot of calls, people talking about retirement. And the calls that you get is for an existing client that is now retiring, they want to know, will I be okay? For clients or Canadians who are contemplating retirement, they want to know what it's going to take for them to retire comfortably. So one of the things that we look at right now is Canadians are living much longer. The last survey I looked at is Canadian male living up to 80 years old, and the female of course, they live longer,
Of
86
course.
years old.
Wow.
Right?
I-
And
I-
also, when we give advice about retirement, one expert says that it's going to take about 70 to 80%
Mhm.
of your pre-existing or pre-retirement income for you to live comfortably in
Mm.
retirement.
Wow.
Also, if you're contemplating doing any traveling, it might take the full 100% of what you were making before retirement.
Mhm.
So it's very important that you really have a plan as to how you're going to go about your retirement. There are a few questions that we start off asking the client or the person, and I wrote them down so I wouldn't forget.
Mhm.
First one, what will you do to keep you busy in retirement? Will you start a new career? Will you pursue new activities? How will you manage your health? And that there is for another show,
Of
talking
course,
about
yeah.
health.
Mhm.
But it's important that we touch on that. Will you be doing this alone or with a partner? And will you be supporting the activities of kids and grandkids? And we see a lot of that going on.
Mhm.
Will there be any changes to your monthly expenses? And what we do, we have when we have a client, we start off by looking at their personal everyday expenses, right? So if there's any changes to that, we want to know when we start the planning of the retirement. The other thing that we want to find out is what is your investment assets and your liabilities. And we hope that there's not much liabilities when we go into retirement. We also look at what is your risk tolerance. Very, very important. So after getting this information, we start doing work for you. But we'll also take a real keen look at medical expenses, right?
Very important.
Because it's very, very important. And we know anything can happen. So if something happens and you don't have a protection plan, first thing you go to is the money that you're saving for your retirement. So we want to make sure we're clear on that.
And that's what we said in our intro, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes. Mhm.
The other part that we look at is inflation, right? And oftentimes when we go into retirement, we have some assets and we want to manage conservatively. But the reality is that if there's inflation, that could create some problems, because what it does, it diminishes your purchasing power. So for example, $1,000, and I'll just do easy math, 4% inflation over a 10-year period, we're looking at that $1,000 is now down to 676. I mean, not, the fact is that you can only buy that amount of goods and service that you would have bought 10 years before. So it is very, very important that we look at these things.
Basil, if I just interrupt right here
Yes.
before I forget, talking about inflation, do
Yes.
most companies, like most of the pension plans, etc.,
Yes.
do they actually do something to keep up with inflation? I know teachers' pension does,
Right.
but some of the other big companies, do they automatically do that?
Yes.
some?
A lot of these defined benefit plans, they do have that built in. Yes, it's indexed, right?
Right.
Certain amount you get on an annual basis, it increases. Yes.
But it's never enough. It's never enough. That's why we need you.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is true.
Okay.
The other thing is understanding the client's risk. Very, very important. Again, wanting to manage your money conservatively, we talk to them and say, hey, listen, if you're doing this conservatively, inflation is XYZ. If we don't manage it to outpace inflation, then you're going to be in trouble down the road. And so what we advise them to do is diversify their investment, and a proper asset allocation management could do that for you. So I know there might be things going off in your head about, you know, the markets, you know, it's been tough.
But that happens all the time. There's no decade that the market doesn't go crazy, but it always comes back.
And,
right?
and I'm glad you said that, because I did a little bit of research here, and I just, June 1982, TSX 12-month return was negative 39%. The 12 months following that, returns was 87%, and the 5-year period following that annualized 27%, for a total of 227%. And
sorry, go ahead. Sorry, finish up.
And August 2001, 12-month period, 33% down, and the following 12 months was minus 9%. But guess what? 2001, what was it? Right? 9/11, right?
Okay.
So, but the following 5 years, 12% annualized, for a total of 79%. And then December 2008, the last 12 months there was 33% down. The following 12 months, 35%, and the following 5-year period, 12% annualized. So yes, we're down.
We get a good picture. It's a good picture. It's a good picture of the ups and downs, right? And
Absolutely.
also in 82, not just the fact that the markets were down. If you remember, that's when we bought our first house.
Oh boy.
And interest rates were like 18%. A second mortgage was 22%.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, it's crazy. But Basil, if somebody were to come to you right now and they need help, what's the first thing? Is there anybody you can't help?
I think we can help everyone if they're willing, right? So, I mean, there, some decisions might be tough, but, if they really want to truly retire comfortably, I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about the money, right? Yeah. We'll suggest things to them that, like we talk to people about downsizing. Some people talked about reverse mortgage, all that sort of stuff, but it's about getting the money so you can retire comfortably, right?
And it's not just the money that they may have, it's the time. Timing is important.
Right.
And with money, the longer you can invest, is the greater your returns will be.
Absolutely.
Right?
So if in a perfect world, what age do you want your clients to start preparing for retirement?
Right now, the sooner the better.
Right.
The sooner the better you start thinking about retirement.
It's funny you should say that, because many young people, and when I say young, I'm talking about people in their 30s, 35,
millennials,
don't focus on retirement. Right. And that is something that, we need to get that generation to understand. Again, it comes back to the longer you plan for your retirement, is the greater the returns will be.
So I think, Mr. Rodney, you want to share with us some of the strategies for how we can go about really trying to build our retirement portfolio.
Well, this is the thing is that the first thing we want to know is how much money you're going to need in retirement. Okay. And then we start looking at what those income sources are going to be. And we know that they're guaranteed income source, and there's asset-based income source. So when we look at guaranteed, we're looking at things like CPP, OAS, and I'll just say CPP is the Canadian Pension Plan, right? And Old Age Security, OAS, right? Then if you're lucky enough to have a defined benefit pension, which is, sets you up, you have a specific amount you get every month from that pension. And you can also have annuities, which could be personal or it could be employer based.
Okay.
Then,
We know this was going to happen. It's 5 to 6 already.
okay.
And we have Ian waiting.
All right.
We know,
So
we're not going to let you go away before we come back to you. But I just wanted to mention something that our show, our listeners are predominantly US and Canada, almost 50-50. And so for our US listeners, they're going to hear about the RSP and OAS, CPP, etc.
absolutely.
But in the States, they will have their
401k.
401k, etc. But the information
Yes.
you give is just generally for everyone. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So the other part, the asset base is RSP, like you say, TFSA, non-registered, and also the defined contribution, which is employer based, where the employee contributes and also the employer, right? So I won't get into, we don't have time to get into all these different things, but the amount of time that you have or you start planning for retirement is much better, because then you have a lot more options. If you're already retired, the options are limited. We're going to look at your expenses. If you don't have enough money to do what you want to do, might look at your expenses and advise that you reduce them, or like if you have a house, you might want to downsize or sell it and rent and all that sort of stuff, the options. But if you are near retirement, you could look at, and when we work things out and there's a gap, not enough money, we can start looking at increasing your savings, cutting the retirement, suggest that in cutting your expenses in retirement, because it suggests that you plan to work till 70 instead of retiring at 65.
Okay.
Or get a part-time job in retirement. So there are a few options, and I know time is of the essence here, so I won't go any further. But the message is retirement is important, and the sooner you start looking at that retirement day, it's the better thing for you.
Yeah, and everybody can benefit, no matter your age, no matter your status, your religion, whatever. Okay, don't go away, Basil. You're still there.
Just before we go to our next guest, I just want to tell our audience, if you're joining us for the very first time, or if you have tuned in late, you're listening to the Liquid Green Health Show on Reality Radio 101. Today, our guests are Ian Romans and Basil Rodney, both with over 12 years of experience in the financial world, and they are with IG Wealth Management of Canada.
Okay, and Basil, when we come back down at the end, don't let us forget to give out your social media and your phone number, etc. We will do that. Ian, we want to get to you before the hour, but gentlemen, I'm going to ask you, because this is such an important topic, and already we're just going to set a new date to bring you back, because what you're doing today is not going to do our listeners, it's going to do a little justice, but for the wealth of information that I know you have, we're going to just say, please, can we just book another date before the end of the year? Okay. So right. Even if you don't get through everything today, Ian, you're the estate planner, amongst other things. We read your bio, there's a list, but I think today you wanted to focus on estate planning. Where would you like to begin? I'm going to let you do like Basil, knowing the time is so short. What's the most important that you'd like to share with us in the beginning?
Well, thanks for having me on the show.
You're so welcome.
I would want to speak about what is estate planning.
Yes.
How do you develop it? What are the things you take in consideration? What are the tools you use? And of course, how you minimize taxation. That if you are living in Canada, we have a very, very aggressive tax system here in Canada. So those are the four main areas I would want to cover.
Okay.
What it is, what we do in developing the plan, and of course, the tools they use in doing the estate planning.
And before, I'm just going to throw this at you, even with all your plan, when should we start estate planning? Make sure you say that as well, right?
Okay.
Yeah, because people think it's for old people. You know, it's such, it's,
or only for rich people.
yeah, and we
Okay,
don't.
okay. All right. So estate planning is really is planning for your exit, is ensuring that in time of grief, because when you lose a loved one, you don't want to have to make very important decision. And so it's important that you set the plan in place that when that time comes, your family not making irrational decision when they're grieving. And secondly, it also deals with planning for incapacity. And that could happen at any time. So in answering the question about when should you start, surely if you are over the age of 18, of course, everybody should have, and I will mention some of the tools, you should have a power of attorney. There are sometimes I have some young clients who the power of attorney is even more important than a will, because if you go on the highway, for example, our biggest highway, 401, and you meet an accident and you will become incapacitated, if you don't have that in place, nobody can access your relative, your mother, whoever can access anything that you have. So estate plan is really about ensuring that your asset pass to the most tax efficient way to your beneficiaries, your family, and of course it avoids uncertainty and a litigation. Because if you are a parent and you have children and you didn't set out what you want, families are torn apart because of estate issues.
Oh gosh,
siblings don't speak to sibling anymore because they're fighting over what is there.
Right.
And it ends up in court where they spend a lot of money and the only persons benefit from it is the lawyers.
The lawyer.
Lawyers. Yep. They go and fight over it, and at the end of it, the family is ruined, right? It also helps to minimize income taxes, right? Now, how do you develop a plan? First of all, you need to talk to your advisor, and it could be your financial advisor like me, or your accountant, your lawyers. And the first thing is, what is the goal? What is it I want to achieve? Is it tangible or intangible? What do I mean by that? Intangible. In developing your estate goals, if your intangible goal is to preserve family harmony, sometimes it's not the best thing to name your child or children the executive of your estate, because they end up fighting over it. You also want to take in consideration if it's your second marriage, and in Canada, we have a lot of second marriages. How do you balance the need for your new spouse with the need of your previous children from a previous marriage? There are competing interests. The current spouse that you have, you love and care for, but you also have children before that spouse. How do you balance those conflicting goals that will arise?
Yes, Ian, you're so right about that. And we all hear the stories. I remember reading in Falmouth, Basil, where we're from, in Falmouth, there was a murder in church just because of that, where the new wife kind of disregarded the children and everything ended up in a gunshot in church and she was dead, right?
Yes,
so
yes.
What you're talking about, we understand. It's so important.
In developing your goals, you're asking, okay, should each child be treated fairly or equally? And being fair is not necessarily equal. So let me give an example. If you have 3 children and one of them is disabled or has some issues, that one needs more care. He needs a greater part of your estate as opposed to the one who is able to manage himself. So are you going to treat them fairly or equally? A very dynamic situation happens if you have a business and if you have 3 children again, you might have one person working inside of the business who have an interest, the other 2 don't have no interest. If you're leaving your estate equally, all those children, it's a nightmare, because now the other children who have no interest are now partners in the business,
Okay.
And usually the business fail because they don't have the knowledge or the acumen or they don't have the interest. All they know is that they're now a shareholder. In your estate plan, you want to ensure that there is enough liquid asset in your estate. So, for example, for persons who own several real estate property, and by the way, real estate is good to own.
Yes.
But the question is when something happens, when you pass away, you could have 3 levels of tax to pay, right? And I'll get into that shortly. So do I have enough liquid asset in my estate to pay for it? And of course, in the final thing in developing your estate goal is, do I want to contribute that to a charity? In other words, a lot of persons have charity with which they give, and of course, give to charity also help. Now, many times people want to reduce probate, and in estate planning, people say, I don't like probate. I want to get out of it. The thing is that probate is you pay when you have a will and it goes to court. It's called probate, and probate is like 1.5% of the value of your estate, over $50,000 in Canada. So it could be substantial, and sometimes persons want to avoid probate, so they do other strategies. So those are the 4 or 5 things that you should go when you are deciding to develop a plan. Now, what are the tools? There are 5 tools that we use in estate planning. The first one is a will. And what's a will? A will is a legally enforced document that outlines how your assets are to be distributed. It appoints an executor who manages your estate, and it usually confers who are the beneficiary and what should get what. Now, if you are a business owner and you live in Ontario, Canada, you might want to have more than one will. You want to have a personal will and a business will. And the rationale is you want to reduce the probate fee, right? So you have one will that deals with your all personal asset, and you have a second will that deals with your business asset, the shares of your corporation. So that can bypass the estate altogether.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. That's,
right.
I thought everything is just one, but you're saying it's just advisable to have to separate.
Right.
But
for one, you reduce the delay that occurs. You reduce the cost of probate because one will be probated, one will not be.
Okay.
Of course, you can't do it yourself. You need to go to a specialized lawyer who does estate planning.
Excuse me, Ian. Quick question. Is that true though? Like, can somebody write their own will?
Yes, there's a handwritten will that you can write, but it is not recommended.
Okay.
It is, well, what is worse though? People have gone online and printed a will form off the internet. That's the worst possible thing. That's not a will.
Okay.
That's not a will. In fact, the handwritten one is even better than that, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
What is not advisable, you want to go to a proper estate lawyer, especially if you have complicated assets, who can make sure that the right things happen. Because you could, for example, if you are a beneficiary to a will, or you're a spouse of beneficiary to a will, and you're a witness to that will, it is void.
Yes.
So you have to understand that, go to this professional, pay them $700, whatever it is, get a proper will done.
Just hold your thought. I just want to go back to the wills. The difference between the two, the personal and the business will. And what he said is very important because a corporation is a total entity. It's like a human being. It has a life of its own.
Oh, I see.
So therefore, you have to have it's important to have a will for that.
Right. The second tool in the box is a power of attorney, which is, and there are 2 of them. There is a power of attorney for care, and that takes consideration for any health decision that person make on your behalf. And that there is a power of management. Now, the POA for management, the persons can do anything that you can do. They can sell your asset, they can dispose of anything. So that person who you choose is somebody who you trust, somebody who is frugal, because they they can do everything that you could do except making a will, right? So it is important, even if you don't have anything, to have a power of attorney in place. Because I said before, if you met in an accident and became incapacitated, nobody can access your assets.
Your bank account, nothing, right?
Account,
I hear
nothing.
that even your car, you can't even sell your car,
You can't
right?
do anything. So that's why I recommend young people, even if you don't have a will in place,
Yeah.
have a power of attorney in place. As if something happened to you and you're suffering, there's somebody who can look after you. Now, the power of attorneys are only good when you're alive. When you're dead, they're done, right?
Right.
The power of attorney is only when you are alive.
So I'm going to tell all our listeners right now, when this show is done, which is what I'm going to do, I'm going to my son and we're going to write that up this week. We're going to get that power of attorney done.
Yes.
Right? Because a lot of people, as you say, Ian, they don't do this for fear. They figure they have time. They're not thinking accident. They're not thinking, they're figuring only the old people are going to die, you know, and you have that will in place. So this is really, really solid advice.
So,
okay.
The power of attorney is considered living will. And the will is when you're gone. Now, then the other tool that we have in our box is people have what? Joint ownership.
Okay.
So like you have a home, you have joint ownership with your spouse, right? Anything that is joint bypasses estate. It goes. So let's say that Fred and you have a joint ownership for real estate. If something happened to Fred,
it's
everything
mine.
goes to you. Yep. All of these years. So that bypasses the estate and goes straight to the beneficiary. And in a lot of families, you have joint ownership. Now, care must be taken, especially if you're a blended family again. If it's your second marriage and you have joint ownership. So think about this. Okay, Fred is married to you, Jan, and you passed away, right?
No, he's dying first. So do it the other way.
Well, so
he's going first.
I get that all the time. So don't worry.
I'm the woman. I'm gonna live. Basil, what did you say? 8 years
86.
longer? Right?
Let's start. Okay, let's turn it around then.
Yeah.
Okay, Fred passes away, and he has everything going to you as his spouse, surviving 30 days. Of course, you have children together. I mean, 2 years later, your grieving stopped. You got married again, right? You got married to somebody who possibly have children too. And if you passed away, Fred and your children could be disinherited. It could possibly skip that generation to a new stranger, because that new spouse now gives it to his issue. So I've seen where original families, they have lost everything. It went straight sideways to the next kid, right?
And that's when the fighting begins.
I mean, it has to go to court.
No, well, I mean, if there is joint ownership, there's nothing. You're going to go to court, but you're not going to win.
You're kidding.
Because if it's joint ownership with the rights of survivorship, it goes straight over to the next person, right? Wow. Some people, in order to avoid probate, they have what's called joint accounts, right? Be careful, because if you have joint accounts with your children or properties for that matter, what happens if their marriage break down? What if they get sued? Right? So if you have a property, you say, you know what, I want to avoid probate, I'm going to add my children to it. Bad idea, because you trigger what's called capital gains tax, right? And if they become married and divorced, that is up for grabs. If they get sued, that's up for grabs. So you be careful about adding joint tenancy with your children. The other thing is having a beneficiary name on certain things. For example, if you have a life insurance, you can have a named beneficiary. If you have a RSP, which is a real estate saving plan, you could have a named beneficiary in it. However, I have seen where a person gets married again, and the previous wife was the named beneficiary. So think about this, Fred. You were married before. I know you're married for 42 years now.
Yeah.
You were married before. That wife was the named beneficiary on that registered plan.
Yeah.
You never change it. You got married and now Janet is your wife. You pass away. Guess what happens? All that money go to the previous wife, right?
Then the fight begins again.
And Janet is left with a tax bill because the RSP is 100% taxable. So let's say you had a $500,000 in your RSP and you had your previous wife, the named beneficiary. She gets the $500,000 paid out to her, and Janet now has a tax bill of $250,000.
Oh my God, this is reality, right? This is real. And I'm sure anything that happens in Canada also happens in the US.
It does.
And most of the Western world,
Ian,
right?
I'm glad you said that. Don't wish for me to die because you don't know who I'm married to, okay?
You're already too old. You're already 71. So, you know, your time's limited.
So there are two other tools. Life insurance.
Before you do the next tool, one quick question, and then we have a few emails that we really want to get to. So don't forget where you are. But my quick question is, when you were talking just now, what about prenuptial agreements? I know, again, movie stars, wealthy people do that. Instead of some of these kind of agreements, does that work in court? Like, you know, instead of joint tenancy, those kind of things?
Okay, so in Canada, we call it cohabitation agreement.
Oh,
right?
okay.
Right? Mm-hmm. And I give a quick example. I had a client who was getting married, and she owned the home with her mother. And she was getting married. And I said to her, you need to change the date of the wedding. She said, no, I can't. I said, okay, I needed to have a cohabitation agreement because her husband was moving into the house where they were living. And if that happens and it passed away, he's automatically becomes a part of the owner.
The owner. And the mother's out.
And mother's out. So it's good to have cohabitation agreement.
Okay.
However, when you meet somebody new and you start talking about that, that could lead to a lot of problems because you don't trust me. You think I'm here to take money off and not go very well, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So
okay.
So
we're gonna get to a few
hold your thoughts for a
emails
minute.
and then we'll come right back.
I have a few emails I'd like to read. Here's one from Karen, and she says, right on, Janet, so true. Financial stress always affects health issues with people. Thanks for this show. Your guests are not only teaching us about financial things, but they are helping our overall well-being health-wise.
Yep.
All right. Absolutely. And we have one from Joyce. And Joyce says, this is a fantastic show today. We need more health and wealth advice now more than ever.
And thank you, Joyce, because that is absolutely the truth. Because one leads to, if you don't, I don't know, if some people choose, right? And we don't really have to choose. We need both.
Right. And here we have one, this is from David. And it's a question for a guest.
I think probably Basil, we can answer this later.
Anyone can answer. Do your guests know anything about critical illness insurance? And if so, even with health issues, now can I still get it?
And what we can do, like Basil, later on, we can share some of these emails. Yeah. Right. So we can send your information out to folks. Not share their email, but send your information so they can get more detailed answers. Sorry, what you were going to say very quickly?
Yeah, we do. We do critical illness insurance, disability, do all the insurance except car insurance. So
wonderful. All right, Ian.
No, before you get to Ian, here's another one from Tina. She says, hi to Janet and Fred. So interesting today. There are 3 of us listening to your show here in Vancouver. Thank you.
Great.
Thanks very much for that, Tina.
Okay. Ian, it's all yours again. Sorry to interrupt, but
it is fine. So the other tool is life insurance. Life
here
insurance
we go.
is very, very, very important. The most wealthy persons have the biggest life insurance. Yep. It's funny. A lot of people of Caribbean descent, when you speak about insurance, they don't want to do it because they think they're going to die. But the most wealthy persons have the biggest insurance policies.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is it provides estate equalization. So let's say in my estate, I have a second property or a cottage, and I have 2 children. I might want to leave the cottage to one, but I need to have an equivalent amount of insurance to the other so they don't fight. Because when you're gone, there'll be a constant fighting. Yes. It maximizes the estate to where you can grow your wealth. So you find a person who will give away things to charity, And when you give something to charity, you get what's called a tax credit. Reduce your income tax.
Yes.
And then they buy a life insurance to replace what they give away, right?
Okay.
You use someone else's money to create wealth for your generation. Someone else's money. It's crazy. And of course, it preserves the estate because, as I said, you could lose up to almost 70% of the estate in taxes.
Right. And that's where the 1.5% comes in.
Actually, more than that. So what happened is that quickly.
What did you say? 20%? You said 20%?
Yeah.
No,
taxes?
over 60%
In taxes?
Taxes. So let me give an
Wow.
example. Let me give an example. If you have a real estate holding, you own several real estate in a company. If you passed away, the value of those things are reflected on your income tax. Tax number one. So the entire values of those companies, the rental properties, is included in your final tax bill.
Wow.
The company, so the company, you pay the tax. The company now wants the money to pay the estate, has to go and sell some of those properties. When they go sell that property, they have what's called capital gains tax.
Yes.
Which is so if they bought the property for 500,000, I know worth 1 million. 500,000 is taxable.
Right.
So you pay the tax on your final tax return. The company pay corporation tax on the property is sold. When the money comes into the corporation, it has to go out. When you pay it out in dividend, you pay tax again, 3 levels of tax. So that is one of the reasons why you need to have a proper plan, have an insurance inside of it, a corporate insurance, life insurance, to mitigate the tax burden.
Yeah.
And my last tool is a trust. Now,
yes,
many persons don't understand what a trust is. A trust is where I have asset, I transferred in what's called a trust, a separate legal entity. And the trust is managed by somebody that's not me.
Right.
So I give my asset over to the trust to manage. The trustee manages the asset on the behalf of the beneficiary, right? So this is one of the tools that you can use, especially if you are a blended family, where upon the death of one, so let's say you and Janet are married, and you want your asset to roll into a trust. So that trust, for as long as she's alive, she's the only person who can access it. And upon her death, it goes back to the original children, right? So that's one of the tools you can use. It also helps to, if children are too young to receive money, the trust can manage that. And of course, it can use to minimize taxes. I don't know, man. We only have 4 minutes left.
But you know, I tell you something. I've heard about compound interest, but I never heard about compounded taxes. What you just explained to me is compounded taxes.
Okay.
Yes, all right.
So, well, okay. So in a nutshell, we're going to hold it there because rather than trying to put a whole lot more in, and we're going to come back. We need both you gentlemen back.
Yes.
But the whole thing about the trust, I would like to do a show just on trust, because it's not just we have been trying.
It's not as simple as we thought it was.
Exactly.
This is very complicated.
And we have been trying to get information. Honestly, we've gone to the internet, we've looked, they're suggesting you talk to lawyers, but you've explained it quite succinctly. And it's something that every family, this show is for Black, white, everybody. Right? We have quite a few nationalities, many different countries listening. But
I want to ask a question.
For Black people, especially, we're not in this space.
Yes.
Right? Not we collectively, because some folks, of course, have done very well. They understand. But when we look at some of the really wealthy families, for example, a Donald Trump, and we hear about the trust and some of those folks, all those people in certain income brackets, they all have family trusts. And most people that are average, we don't.
I need to ask a question here.
Sure.
To create a trust, does it matter how much wealth you have?
Yes and no. So what I mean, if you have $100,000, it does not make sense to form a trust because it is a separate filing thing that has to be done.
Mhm.
You have to go to lawyer, set it up. You need to have substantial asset to do that. You can use one of the other 4 tools I mentioned, but the trust is really for protection from marital breakdown for your children, protection from lawsuit, protection from if you have incapacity. So you're right. We could have a presentation just on trust only.
Yes, great.
You have a trust while you're alive, and a trust when you're gone. There's a living trust and there's a testamentary trust. So it is quite a lot.
So at this point, before we forget, how can people, we know we have some specific questions. Basil, you want to start with you? You want to give us, like, tell us how can somebody reach you? Best way, share some social handles, whatever.
You can reach me at my my email is basil.rodney@ig.ca. So basil.rodney@ig.ca.
And that's BASIL, Basil, right?
That is correct.
And Rodney, not a very common name, popular.
Rodney. Yes.
Right. Okay.
Well, it's not a common surname. It's a very common first name.
First name, right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And
is there a phone number?
Yes. Phone number 416-841-6037.
Okay.
That's 416-841-6037. And Ian, same for you. How could
So
somebody
it's ian.romans@ig.ca. So it's ian.romans@ig.ca.
And you folks work together at IG Wealth?
Yes. We meet every Thursday.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
We are colleagues.
Okay.
Ian, you were about to give out your phone number.
It's 905-443-1115.
That's 905-443-1115.
That's
okay.
correct.
And it's 6/27.
Yes.
And we want to mention what's coming up next week. Next week, we're disregarding health on the health show, where we have someone, his name is Arthur Augustine. And in Canada, I know in the US, the elections are coming up. So it is the municipal elections are coming up. And we're going to host Mr. Augustine. He is running for mayor in Ajax. And we are going to definitely have him on. And I don't know how to link that to health. So we're just going to say the health show is going to be talking politics next week.
We will figure out a way, because politics is a stress related in
yeah,
thing.
right.
So like not having enough money can cause stress.
Yeah.
So is having the wrong politician.
There we go. Having the wrong politician will definitely create stress, because that's where it all begins. But you're going to thank our guests.
We want to thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yeah.
Your information certainly is, invaluable.
Absolutely.
And we certainly will look forward to having you once again, because the topics that you wanted to cover and couldn't do it because of time is always wide and plentiful. Right. And so we have to have you back on the show. A lot of our listeners, I'm certain, have been glued to the radio or to Facebook. Taking in what was being offered to them. So once again, I want to thank you folks for being on the show. And we're looking forward to having you back on the show.
We have 2 minutes.
Yeah. Coming up, what's coming up next week?
Before next
week. Again, we want to talk about OTCI.
Oh, yes. Oh, boy.
Right.
Okay. I don't think we have time, but
we don't have a lot of time, but I'm just going to briefly mention it. OTCI is an organization that is working specifically with tenants or anyone that would like to acquire real estate to build real estate equity as a cooperative.
Ontario Tenants Cooperative,
yes.
Inc., right?
And that's what it is.
Okay.
Because municipalities are talking of ways to combat the grave situation of homelessness.
Yeah.
And they're reaching out to communities to come up with ideas.
And that's one of the organizations that we're affiliated with. And also Liquid Green, we have something powerful. We can't disclose what it is yet.
Yes.
But there is something we're working on with someone, and I'm really, really, really excited about it.
Yeah, you got
Because we're going to be
closed for now, right?
But it's going to be
coming.
big.
Something
It's
is
going to
coming.
be big.
In the
right?
meantime, for those of you that are listening or would like to learn more about OTC,
Mhm.
OTCI, we encourage you to go to the website otci.ca. That's otci.ca. There is information that you can download. Take a read of it, and then go from there. Right. And with that, I'd like to end today's show. Time is running out so quickly. Right.
Yeah.
If you've missed any of our shows, you can watch them on the following platforms: Spotify, Facebook, and don't forget to go to Liquid Green Products. Enter your promo code RR101. This has been the Liquid Green Health Show you've been listening to. My name is Fred Cox, our host Janet Cox, and Reality Radio 101.
Healthy.
And we'd like to say, let's stay healthy.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Liquid Green Health Show with your hosts, Fred and Janet Cox, right here on Reality Radio 101.